Our wagon train to the past takes us back in time to discuss newspaper accounts, which tell us of the consequences of an angry outburst by J.C. Wilson. From his initial stabbing of young Benjamin Ball, through Wilson's escape, recapture, and eventual sentencing, even mentioning a later pardon request. Additionally, the text briefly covered two other separate incidents, one involving William Gazolo and another concerning Claud Wilson, who assaulted a city marshal. The collection offers a glimpse into the judicial processes and societal reactions to crime during this period, including the pursuit of fugitives and the debate over penal reform. Hang on to your hats. This episode is sponsored by BJ and Kim Staley, who are the owners of Bud and Steve Auto Service at 1201 North Main in Newton. The shop is located just one block from where the old Chisholm Trail crossed Sand Creek. A big shout out goes to them for their support of Prairie Tales.
Welcome, everyone. You know, sometimes you just want to cut through all the noise, get straight to the point without feeling totally overwhelmed by information. Well, that's what we're aiming for today. We've dug up some fascinating old newspaper clippings.
Yeah, real snapshots from the time.
They give this incredible glimpse into life in late 19th century Newton, Kansas, using old newsprint as a time machine.
Yeah, no DeLorean needed. Just the local papers. We've really focused on three specific incidents.
Okay.
All happened right there in Newton, just a few years apart.
So what are we looking at?
We've got a pretty brutal stabbing, then the capture of this wanted guy who, it turns out, had a history in Newton already.
Oh, interesting.
And a serious assault on a town marshal.
Right. So specifically, that's the Benjamin Ball stabbing in 1878.
Yep.
Then William Gazolo's capture in 79, but with this earlier Newton connection.
Exactly. That connection is key.
And finally, the 1882 attack on Marshal Sawyer.
That's the lineup.
Okay. So our mission here is to unpack these, not just what happened, but, what can these raw accounts tell us about life back then?
Yeah, about the community, how the law worked, or maybe didn't work sometimes.
In a town that was still, growing, finding its feet on the frontier.
Precisely. So where should we start? Case number one. All right, setting the scene. Late October 1878, we've got reports from both the Newton Kansan and the Harvey County News.
Okay.
They both call it a cutting affray. Happened on a Saturday night at Seaman's livery stable.
A livery stable?
Yeah.
Okay. And the people involved?
Benjamin Ball, who worked there, and a farmhand named James Wilson, though some reports call him J.C. Wilson.
And what sparked it? Must have been serious.
You'd think so, but apparently not, initially anyway. The papers say it started because Ball refused to take a load of corn from Wilson.
Just the corn?
Yeah. Ball said he didn't have orders from Seaman, the owner, so he couldn't accept it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That seems like a tiny thing to lead to a cutting affray.
It does. And this is likely where alcohol comes in. Seems Wilson came back to town later that day. The reports say he was intoxicated. He found Ball, they had some kind of fight, and Wilson got worsted, is the term they use.
Worsted?
Yeah.
So he lost the fight.
He lost, but he didn't let it go.
Oh, no.
He came back again after dark this time.
And Ball? What was he doing?
Ball was just doing his job, holding a lantern, helping some folks hitch up their team of horses, and Wilson just attacked him. Yeah.
Whoa.
Came up and stabbed him with a knife multiple times.
Oh, man. How bad was it?
Pretty horrific. The reports mention wounds in the stomach, the neck, the face. The Harvey County News described a fearful gash in his abdomen, several inches long.
Did he survive initially?
There was a moment of hope, it seems. One paper said, Ball appears to be getting better.
Okay.
But they immediately added that the stomach wound was, extremely serious.
And it was.
Sadly, yes. Later reports confirmed Benjamin Ball died from his injuries on November 13th, 1878.
November 13th. So a few weeks after the attack.
Right. It wasn't immediate, but the damage was done.
Did they do a post-mortem? Do we know exactly what happened internally?
They did. And it really confirms how violent the attack was. The knife went into his liver, over an inch deep.
Wow.
And mortification, basically tissue death, had already started.
How old was he? Did he have family nearby?
Only about 30 years old. Unmarried. His parents lived over in Marion County.
So not too far, but not right in Newton.
Correct. And the paper mentioned his body was being taken there for burial. There's this kind of sad little note about the possibility his grave might end up unmarked.
Ugh, that really hits home, doesn't it? The sort of precariousness of things back then.
It really does. A young man, gone. And then there's the whole legal side. What happened to Wilson?
Right, J.C. Wilson, he must have been arrested.
He was, yes. Arrested right away. His hearing was postponed, though, waiting to see if Ball would recover.
Which he didn't.
No. But then, while Wilson was being held, actually, they'd moved him to the jail in Wichita, probably for better security.
Okay.
He escaped.
What? He escaped after killing someone?
Yep. Him and 2 other prisoners. Just broke out.
I can only imagine the reaction in Newton. First the murder, then the killer escapes.
Exactly. People must have been furious. And probably scared.
So, rewards. Manhunt.
Oh, yeah. The county commissioners put up $150 pretty quickly. Then the state added another $300. Big money back then.
Definitely. And you can see the frustration, right? I think you mentioned the local paper even editorialized about it.
Yeah. The Kansan basically asked why Harvey County didn't have a proper secure jail. It really highlights those infrastructure problems, trying to build a town and keep order at the same time.
As a classic frontier challenge.
Took several months, but they found him in Decatur, Illinois.
How did they track him down?
Get this. Someone working in the Harvey County clerk's office was key. Seems they were diligent in spreading the word or recognizing him somehow.
Huh? Good on him. Real dedication there.
Definitely. They brought him back to Kansas. There's actually a slightly darkly funny comment in an Illinois paper about him avoiding sunburn by being locked up in the Cottonwood Falls jail on his way back.
Oh. Okay. So justice eventually. What was the sentence?
He was tried, convicted, and J.C. Wilson got 15 years in the state penitentiary for killing Benjamin Ball.
15 years. Okay. End of story.
Not quite. There's another twist.
Oh.
About 4 years into his sentence, there was a push to get him pardoned.
Pardoned? On what grounds?
Apparently, some newly discovered evidence came to light. The argument was that maybe it wasn't premeditated murder, but manslaughter, heat of the moment kind of thing.
And who's pushing for this pardon? Just his family?
No, that's what's really interesting. It had widespread support. The judge from the original trial.
The judge. Wow.
Yeah. Members of the jury, the prosecuting attorneys, prominent citizens in Newton, they all signed on supporting the pardon request.
That's surprising. It really makes you wonder about that new evidence, or maybe how people felt about the whole thing looking back.
It does. Maybe feelings cooled. Maybe there were mitigating circumstances not fully explored at trial. Plus, reports said Wilson had been a model prisoner.
Okay. So, good behavior record. Did he get the pardon?
The records show he went into the penitentiary in 1879, prisoner number 2001, and he might have gotten a year off for good behavior.
Right.
But after 1883... the trail goes cold. We don't actually know if the pardon went through or what happened to him after that point.
So another layer of uncertainty. The justice system back then, definitely complex.
Absolutely. All right, shall we shift gears a bit?
Yeah, let's do that. You mentioned another case, William Gazolo, which connects Newton to crime elsewhere.
That's one. So around 1879, maybe early 1880, this Italian guy, William Gazolo, gets arrested way up in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay, what for?
For murdering someone named Louis Zerga back in Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha. Okay, so different state entirely. Why did they kill Zerga?
Seems it was over gambling winnings. A dispute after a game. Sounds almost like a, Wild West movie plot.
It really does. So what's the Newton connection here? How does he fit into our story?
Well, the key thing is, before he allegedly killed Zerga in Omaha, Gazolo had spent time locked up right there in Newton, Kansas.
Ah. So he had a prior record in Newton.
Exactly. And do you want to know what he was in jail for in Newton?
I do.
He had shot a woman, described as a frail woman from Wichita. Apparently she had helped him steal some horses.
Oh, horse stealing and shooting someone. So he was already involved in some serious stuff before the Omaha murder.
Definitely. It just shows that Newton, around the same time as the Ball stabbing, wasn't isolated. It was also dealing with individuals involved in crime across state lines.
Right. It wasn't just local disputes boiling over.
No. The St. Paul paper called Gazolo a desperado mentioned he used aliases, and there were big rewards out for him for the Zerga murder.
So Newton was kind of a pass-through point, or maybe even a base for some of these wider criminal elements.
It seems plausible, yeah. It paints a more complex picture than just, local fights. There's this undercurrent.
Definitely adds another dimension. Okay, so we have the bull stabbing showing local violence and justice issues, Gazolo showing connections to wider crime. What's our third case? Marshal Sawyer.
Right, Marshal Sawyer. This brings us forward just a little bit to August 1882.
Still in Newton.
Still in Newton. And this one really shines a light on the dangers faced by local law enforcement.
Okay, what happened?
It starts with a man named Claud Wilson. Now, different Wilson, different last name than the guy who killed Ball.
Okay, Claud Wilson, not JC.
Correct. Claud Wilson was driving a team, like a horse-drawn wagon or carriage, while he was drunk.
Oh, yeah.
And he hit a child. Injured the child pretty badly, the reports say, seriously bruised.
Oh, that's awful.
Terrible incident. It seems someone acted fast, though. A special policeman arrested Wilson.
A special policeman, like deputized for the occasion, maybe.
Could be. Or maybe just an auxiliary officer. Anyway, this special policeman arrests Wilson and is actually taking both Wilson and the injured child to see a doctor.
Like said.
And that's when Marshal Sawyer gets involved. The special policeman hands Wilson over to him.
All right. So Sawyer takes custody.
Yep. And Sawyer tells Wilson, logically, okay, you're going to jail. Standard procedure after something like this, especially involving alcohol and injury.
Sure.
But Wilson didn't take it well. As Sawyer is telling him this, Wilson pulls out a concealed knife and tries to stab the marshal.
What? Tries to stab the marshal while being arrested.
Exactly, right then and there.
Did he succeed? Was Sawyer hurt?
Thankfully, no. Sawyer managed to avoid getting seriously injured, but the newspaper really stressed how close it was.
Yeah.
Mentioned he narrowly avoided getting his throat cut.
Jeez. That is incredibly dangerous, just doing his job, and he almost gets killed.
It really highlights the risks, doesn't it? You're dealing with someone intoxicated, unpredictable. You just don't know what they might do or what they might be hiding.
Absolutely, a stark reminder. Yeah. So, Claud Wilson didn't get away with attacking the marshal, I hope.
No, he faced consequences. He was convicted for the attempted assault on Marshal Sawyer.
Good. What did he get?
Sentenced to 1 year in the penitentiary.
A year. Okay.
And interestingly, the same newspaper report mentions other sentences from that same court session. Things like horse-stealing convictions.
Right. So it gives you a little snapshot of the court's docket at the time. Assaults, theft, the usual stuff, maybe intensified.
Yeah, it provides that context. It shows what the local justice system was grappling with day to day.
Okay, so we've looked at these three quite different incidents. Ball, Gazolo, Sawyer, all in Newton, all within a few years. When you pull back and look at them together, what's the bigger picture? What does it all tell us about Newton back then?
Well, I think the most unavoidable theme is violence. It seems pretty pervasive.
Yeah, it really jumps out. Fatal violence, attempted violence.
Right. Whether it's a personal dispute exploding, like with Ball and Wilson, or maybe more calculated stuff like Gazolo was involved in, or just a drink and lashing out like the attack on Sawyer, violence seems like a real part of the landscape.
And alcohol fuels so much of it.
Definitely. It's explicitly mentioned in the Ball case escalation and central to the Claud Wilson incident. It really paints a picture of, well, maybe a community where tensions ran high and drink could easily push things over the edge.
Impulse control wasn't always great, perhaps.
Perhaps not. But beyond the violence itself, we also see the legal system trying to cope.
Right. It's not total lawlessness. There are arrests.
Arrests, trials, sentences, even if the jail isn't always secure, as Wilson's escape showed.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
But you also see rewards being offered, that clerk helping track down an escaped prisoner, the whole pardon debate later. There's a system there. It's just maybe struggling, evolving.
Adapting to the realities of a frontier town that's growing fast.
Exactly. It's messy, but it's functioning, or trying to.
And woven through all of this are the actual people. It's easy to forget that.
Absolutely. Benjamin Ball, just a young guy working at a stable, life cut short over basically nothing.
Tragic.
J.C. Wilson, facing years in prison, maybe wrestling with what he did, seeking a pardon.
Marshal Sawyer, putting his life on the line, just doing his duty.
And even Gazolo, this desperado, leaving his mark on Newton before moving on to commit more crimes elsewhere. These aren't just names in old newsprint.
They were real lives, caught up in the turbulence of the time.
Which leads to a bigger thought, maybe for our listeners to ponder.
Okay.
When you see these kinds of events popping up repeatedly in one place over just a few years, what does that suggest about the deeper currents? What were the, social factors, economic pressures?
In a place like Newton, developing so quickly.
Yeah. What were the underlying challenges in just trying to build a safe, orderly community back then? How much do these individual stories reflect those bigger, maybe harder to see historical forces?
That's a really good question to leave people with. It makes you think about what life was really like, not just the myths of the West, but the day-to-day grind and danger. These newspaper accounts, they're raw, unfiltered glimpses. They show the progress, sure, but also the real struggles for basic safety and security.
Yeah, it's not always a heroic story. Sometimes it's just messy and violent.
Well, hopefully, by digging into these specific cases, we've given everyone a bit more of a vivid, maybe a more nuanced feel for that specific time and place in American history.
Beyond just dates and names.
Exactly. A sense of the real texture of life in late 19th century Newton.
The moral of the story? Remember God's words in Proverbs 21. Wine is a mocker, and beer is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by them is not wise. Another word of advice: be sure to always check your sleeping bag for rattlesnakes before crawling in.